Right. Finally, hello, Nat Mossart. How are you?
Hello.
You all right?
I'm good, thanks. Are you?
I am, thank you. For those watching, I've had a nightmare trying to connect to my crappy Wi-Fi. But hopefully it's all working, it's all good now. Um,
Seems to be.
yeah, have you had a good week?
Yeah. I've been busy drawing and then painting, all glossing all my landing. Bad time to do it in the Easter holidays when the kids are all off mind.
Have you had handprints all over the house? Off.
Do you know what? Right, honestly, I was shocked because I thought I would have, but I done it over the space of 2 days, and the worst thing we had was I walked past my own glossing and my hair stuck to the bathroom door, and that's about it. The kids weren't too bad.
Oh well, you always look good with your one hair light and one hair dark. So maybe it's trying to tell
Oh
you.
yeah. Well, yeah, I did, Matthew, until half my hair fell out, and now I've just got some nice chunky sideburns.
Yeah, even that works. You're an artist. You can get away with all sorts. So just like shave half off. And just yeah, I'm sure that'll help you stand
I've
out
had
in the
to move,
crowded art space.
I suppose so, but I've had to move my pattern. It was this side, and now I've had to move it to this side, and
Ah,
I've more hair this side. Just took me a while to get used to. When you move your pattern, it seems a bit strange, doesn't it?
yeah.
Not that you've known.
Oh no, I have actually moved my pattern before a long time ago. But my head is complicated by having uh too many crowns, which sounds a bit yes, I've got too many crowns. But yeah, I've got my hairdresser told me what it's called. I've got I think three here. So it's
Oh,
out funny and then I've got one
yeah,
round here somewhere. So my hair it desperately needs cutting, so I'm getting it done next week. So yeah, so I'll
my
keep
son
going.
has a double.
That's flopping down. Your son has as
My
well.
son's, yeah, he's got two, one each side of the back of his head. So
Oh,
his hair is kind of the curl in. So when he was little, he just had this spike on the back of his head all the time. It was a nightmare to try and get a hairstyle where it was like
yeah.
it would either go down or stick up.
Well, I discovered mine where in 1985, right? So, but the reason because uh, Rocky Four.
Oh, you froze.
Oh,
You froze a little bit there.
can you see me on my back?
You can now. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
back now.
1985, Rocky Four came out, and all kids my age got flat tops because, like Drago, and that was when my crown because it went all funny at the back. So yeah, I was gutted. But yeah, there was a lot of spiky hair in those days. Um, anywho, right. So, well, first things
Hmm.
is to thank, I believe it was Julie from
Yeah.
last week confirming that worms do indeed have a bum. So thank you very much, Julie. I've slept better this week knowing that I don't have to wonder anymore. So thank you very
And
much.
my endless questions and wondering has now finally come to an end. I can now worry about something else.
I'm sure I was going to say I'm sure you'll come up with something else to yeah to really get us pondering the well some of the deeper questions of life on Earth.
Well, I do think I've passed my wonders of the world on to my children because my daughter asked me a question the other day and it's been bugging me ever since she asked.
All right, go on then.
She said, and as soon as she said it, I looked at her and thought, you are just like me. She asked me, Mum, why do rats not have bum cheeks? And I thought, well, I actually don't know why. I mean, would there be a scientific reason why they don't?
I would guess, and I don't know much about rats' anatomy, but I would guess that so your gluteus, like maximus and minimus, your gluteus muscles in your backside, I expect that they would have those muscles, but they may be in a different place, so maybe they're kind of more underneath because they need to help you with your leg movement. So yeah, I don't know. We'll throw it out there. Does anyone know about whether rats actually do have bum cheeks? Um, It's a good question. Yeah.
It's a good question. I thought I'm not going to Google it just yet. I'll save it for the pod.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all of this, it's obvious. Easy to see why Einstein was your chosen subject this week. I've also
Oh, yeah.
very similar intellectual curiosity about the world and solving the big
Well,
questions. And
I wouldn't go as far to say as I was intellectual as much as Einstein, Matthew, but I will totally accept that online.
they they couldn't draw as well as you.
Hmm, you never know. Did you ever see Einstein with a pencil?
Uh, no.
So we don't know how
Yeah,
he could
yeah,
draw.
that's true. Maybe his drawing was just overshadowed by his theory of relativity. Who knows?
Possibly. Knew
Right.
too much about it.
Yeah. So yeah, he was dead frustrated because he just always wanted to talk about his drawing, but everyone kept asking him about that. Right. So we've established that worms have bums, so I'll tick that off my list. And yeah, do you want to start with the question we've had submitted? It was via YouTube, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we had a question come in from YouTube.
Okay.
So the question actually is two questions in one. So
Oh,
I'll read out the first part of the question, and then once we've gone through that, then I'll ask the second part.
okay.
So this was the comment. So another excellent podcast.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. I have another question now. Is there a certain style or way of making art that you prefer over other forms? And if so, what is it?
Right. Well, so for me, I portraits is
Yeah,
what I do. And we've said before, I have done some animal paintings, but yeah, it's mainly portraits, and I use. It's funny. So I use acrylic paint, and I use the same size canvas board to paint everything on.
yeah,
So I pretty much um yeah, I don't know, creature of habit, I guess. But I've tried. One of the things I'm conscious of is trying to maybe do some different things. But my kids bought me some watercolor paints for I think it was Father's Day last year.
mm,
And it's solid. It's like, well, it's not solid. It's like liquid. It's really, really difficult.
yeah,
So I want to I'd like to kind of learn how to use them, and because I think using a different style, using a different medium, I think it brings different things out of you as an art.
yeah,
So, but I don't know. I suppose because with me, I really enjoy painting portraits, and I've got a massive list of people I want to paint. So I don't, and I kind of, I'm a bit like kind of all or nothing type. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I'm not sort of could just experiment with lots of different things. I, it's like I'd rather go all in on one, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, yeah, so that's me. I mean, I think, a lot more eclectic in your yeah, the way you create.
I would say, well, we've always said, I've always had a joke and said, I think I've got some sort of art ADHD. Like I can't stick to one thing. I've got to do a little bit of everything. I'll
Yeah.
have three paintings on the go at once, and I'll get bored of one, put it down, start another, and before I know it, I've got loads of unfinished stuff, and then I've got to leave it till I'm in the mind frame again, and then I'll come back to it. But then I am now getting tested for ADHD, so that could explain it. And it might not have been such a joke as I first said. Um, but yeah, it's for me, it's my favorite. I would say my favorite medium to use for me would be, I'd have to say charcoal, I think. I like charcoal and I just love the way it blends with my brush. And I like that you can just like get so much tiny little detail in there with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's
I
something
would say,
that really stands out about with your, I mean, portraits in particular, the detail you get. And I love on your
oh,
videos,
thank
like
you.
showing how that you using your brush with the charcoal. I don't know
Yeah,
that. Well, you had that reel that did really well this week, didn't you? Did someone say it
yeah.
was hypnotic or something? But I don't know. There is something about it. Does look really cool. I don't know. It's I'm strange, but yeah, no, I did understand that.
Well, somebody had said as well, because obviously with the one I was doing was of Einstein and he's got a mustache, which I absolutely love mustaches and beards, and I just can't wait to get my pencil into it. But yeah, I do
David
like an
Bellamy coming next.
engraving.
Sorry,
Sorry, I never heard what you said.
they we've got a David Bellamy portrait coming next, have we?
You never know. Well, well, I do like an engraving sort of technique with like
Yeah,
I've got an engraving tool. It's you can use a pen that's run out of ink as well, like a biro, and you just engrave the paper, and then it keeps the white in the fine lines
oh,
in
that's
the
right.
mustache. And somebody had commented actually on the video that I did of that, like, did I just give away a secret? But I just replied and was like, I like to share my
Yeah,
process because I always like to think that's, if I've got something that I do that could help somebody else with theirs. I mean, I know what it's like to not know certain techniques, and if I'd
yeah,
have known them a little bit sooner, if somebody would have told me about that, I could have improved my art skills a lot quicker.
yeah,
But I didn't really have anyone like telling me and giving me tips. So I had to kind of find out these things on my own.
yeah,
And I think if I'd have known about them sooner, I would have progressed faster. So if I can help somebody else with what they do, then that makes me feel happy to know it's
yeah,
inspired someone, to know someone can pick up a few tips here and there from me, which would be amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I think my sort of go-to for painting, it's a toss-up between acrylic and oils, but I really, really love the way oils blend together and how they stay wet for a couple of days so you can continue working them
I
and they
haven't got
don't dry.
patience for
And
that.
I just love oils, I really do. So I would say charcoal and oils would be my favourite ones. I do use acrylic a lot. And yours would be acrylic then.
Yeah, and in terms of a style, so there's that thing
Mm,
about, I think I mean, your work is recognizably yours, like you just know it's one of your, even though you do say a lot of kind of diverse types of art, there's
yeah,
definitely a kind of, I don't know, a signature or whatever you want to call it that kind of identifies it as one of yours. And
yeah.
you say, regardless of medium and the type of piece you're creating, do you have a way that you would describe your style of creating?
Um, for me, I don't feel like I have a style. Like I really don't. Like I know you said that you can recognize my work, which is quite interesting actually, because it's not something I thought other people would be able to do. Um, yeah, because I just have so many different types of things that I do that I don't stick to like one certain thing in particular. So like, they're all so different. Like one minute I can do a portrait, and then the next minute I'm doing something else. And yeah, I just think I think a lot of my stuff is very different.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
quite interesting that you feel that you can recognize it.
I think it's interesting as well. Like that whole
Mm,
question about whether you have a style. I mean, I enjoy watching YouTube videos on art, but
yeah,
it's more about not the technical aspects of it. I'm interested in more about the individual artists and their approach to it, and wider questions about
yeah,
the business of it. Because say I run my own business apart from this, and it's really interesting where some of the things I've seen in terms of getting your work out there and in front of people. One of the things I say is about having a recognizable style,
yeah.
or even a a theme, and it's a similar thing with kind of marketing and a business. Is that, real clarity, say about real clarity, who you are, what you're about. But there is that other
Mm.
side as well, isn't there? That, sometimes I think, you know, not as a, I don't know, I don't criticize myself because I like what I do, but I do have that little thing in the back of my mind that I just do that as opposed to, like yourself and others who are able to do all kinds of different things. But I suppose it goes,
Mm.
what we've always said, it's that individuality, isn't
Yeah,
it, really?
but it is, but plus you've only really just been doing it properly since February, Matthew. So at the end of the day, I think that'll come in time. I mean, when I first started doing, I mean, I've always
Yeah.
drawn with pencils like, when I was young, but as I got older and I started to do more, experimented with oil paints, and the first paints I really used. I didn't use acrylic to start off with. Um, and then I started doing a few more bits, and then, my family friends would be like, "Can you paint my granddad, or can you paint some member of the family?" I've even done dogs and things like that. But it starts off where you kind of stick to what you know because that's what you're used to doing. But as
Yeah.
time goes on and you progress, you will start to find, oh, actually, I mean, I never ever used to use charcoals. I used to always use graphite pencil.
All right.
And
Okay.
as time's gone on, and I've realised, oh, I quite like these charcoals, and it's what works for you. So
Yeah.
you'll discover
Yeah.
new things as you go on your journey. You will.
Yeah. I think I've said this before. It's like when you're saying about how it blends. I mean, for me, like with
Mm.
acrylics, and I love the way I love the way it feels putting the paint down. I'll tell you what I really like when I've got a thick brush and I'm going around an outline.
Yeah,
Weird, isn't it? The things when it just goes on really smooth. Um, yeah, it just feels really, and that I mean, and then that's the thing, isn't it? The feel of it. It is a part of it when I look at how how my work has developed. Particularly in terms of kind of blending some of the skin tones and stuff.
mm.
It is often it's been getting more of a feel for it. Uh,
Yeah,
and when I try something different, particularly when I started painting animals, that was one of the things I noticed that it's like, let's say it's messy first, so I paint in a messy way, and I'm all,
yeah.
and I suppose that's how I've kind of, if I have learned technically, it's kind of been that really, that being,
Different textures.
yeah, and being bold
Yeah,
in just being able to, not trying to be precise. See, if I'd describe my
yeah.
style, if one of the words I use is messy, really, in terms of,
Like
um,
a loose sort of style, like you paint loosely.
yeah.
Yeah. I think the way you outline it as well looks really good, and that's what helps me identify that's a Matthew Williams piece
All
right
right.
there.
Well, I
Yeah.
like it's interesting because sometimes, again, depending on the subject, sometimes I like to get it kind of precise, but other times
Mm.
I'll just like to, e- even if I've got it precise, I'll just do a random line on it to,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things I like as well, where I kind of suppose it sounds a bit like a cliche, but what I'm working on at the moment, it's like there's parts where it's like the paint does the work kind of thing. In that, if you'd say, well, how did you do that? It's like, well, it's like the paintbrush did, a certain start. It's like having that feel for it that
Yeah.
yeah, it is hard to put
I,
into words.
I think I know what you're saying, right? Because I think my dad asked me this question actually. I could be wrong, but I think he did. Someone did, but I'm pretty sure it was my dad. He said something like, "How do you manage to do these? Like to get it
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
do? Do you just draw the face? Like?" And I said to him, "I don't draw a face. When I
yeah,
draw a face, I don't draw a face. That sounds a bit strange, but I don't.
yeah,
So what
yeah.
I do is I create the shading. So instead of, I'll probably start
Oh, you've paused. Oh,
off with the eyeshadow, so then different tones, and then I work
sorry, hang
outwards.
on a
So
second.
if
You
I
you
was to
froze
draw a
there.
face,
Sorry, you
I
froze.
froze.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's my crappy Wi-Fi, isn't it? Right. Sorry, you're back. So you went at the point where you said about you start with the shade. You start with the shade.
Right.
So from there.
So instead of drawing an actual face, I will draw what I see.
Yeah.
I don't look at it face. I'll look at it like so I'll draw the eye and then I'll look, right, we've got an eyebrow. So we want the color of their eyebrow. I don't do an
Yeah.
eyebrow. I
Yeah.
just do the shades that I see.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a darker shade here and probably under there. And then there'll be like a light area and I'll go for this. And then what happens is I draw all the different shadings and highlights in the way that I see them. And then all of a sudden there's a face.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. So that sounds like what you're doing with your
Yeah.
paints.
Well, that's one of the things that uh kind of mentally I think is a really good way of approaching it. That I
Yeah,
think that I'm create it's colors and shapes. It's colors and shapes. And so when people say, well, could it's funny where my mom said something like, well, could you paint this person? I was like, well, yeah, I could paint anyone. And that's not it
yeah,
because it's just it's no different painting one person to another. It's just colors and shapes.
yeah,
And I'm doing one at the moment. And it's that it's psychologically it's different. It's because saying if you think I'm drawing an eye, that comes with it a lot of ideas about what an eye should look like, and you can end
yeah.
up doing that rather than what you actually see. And that's when you're looking at colors. I found that was one of the things I learned quite early on. It's like
Mm,
when you look at colors, you think, well, that's white, and then you look at it, and it's not. It's different shades of blue and yellow
yeah.
and this and that. And so it's that what you see rather than oh, it's a face or it's an eye or and so your description there of how you built that up into a face, I think it really kind of highlights that approach. And I think it's
Mm,
sorry, I'm going off on one here, but it goes back to that question because when people say, well, how do you do it? I think so for me that's one of the reasons that stop people from start doing things because they don't know how to
yeah,
do it. But actually you kind of learn as you go, don't you? You know, and
yeah. I think it's overwhelming for people sometimes. If you look at a face, like for me, if I see, I know I've mentioned it before, but if I see faces differently. So I'll see, let's say, an old man. He's got lots of, facial hair. I love the greys in the beard as
you're
well.
talking about
So like,
me.
but have you
Old
got
man with
greys? Have
grey in
you?
his beard. Yeah,
Oh, I can see a few
none on my
there.
head yet. None on my head yet. But yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
you're
sorry.
doing well. Get a bit of boot polish out.
Oh, don't
Um,
happen. I'm growing old with dignity. Uh, well,
Grow old gracefully. Yeah.
anyway, sorry, go.
So, oh, sorry. So yeah, I'll see like an old man's face with all the white hairs and the blemishes to the skin, the lines on the forehead and the wrinkles, and I'm just like, bring it to me. Give me that picture. I just want to start it. But when you see like a face, now I've got my own little term for it. Sorry if I offend anybody by this,
Go
but
on, go on.
I'll see a face and I'll be like, oh, I can't draw that. The face is too bald. It's a bald face. And I've said that to John before, and he's like, and I'm like, it just means when I say that, it just means none of the features stand out to me. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
just it just looks bald in the features that I'm seeing. So when I see a bald face, I don't always want to draw it, but when
Yeah,
I see one that,
be interested. It wouldn't be interesting for you as an artist to
yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Plus, I think the more detail, for me anyway, the more detail that there is on a face, the easier I find it to draw.
All right. See, that's really interesting for me because that, like I said, I've always that the amount of detail in your work, and I haven't got the patience for that. I mean, but and I suppose it's like when people have said, "Man, it's really detailed," but it's like sometimes it's you. I don't know, using the brush in a way where you get that effect that doesn't actually
Mm,
take a lot of painstaking. You know, like when I see animals and it's
yeah.
like an individual hair at a time, you're like, bloody hell. But yeah, I suppose with me, it's kind of an improvisation. You find a way that you can create that effect quickly. Whereas, say, the amount of detail the specific detail you get in your, I think is just yeah, it's amazing and like yeah,
Thank you. See, I would find it difficult to not add the details. Like, when I've seen people do loose paintings of like landscapes and they look amazing, like you go far away from them
yeah,
and they look really detailed. And then you go closer to them
yeah,
and like you just think it's just little brush strokes. There's
yeah,
nothing
yeah,
detailed about it. And that's a really clever way of doing it. And it's what you do in yours. It's where you don't have to add the detail because when you stand back from it, there's
yeah,
detail.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think maybe I don't know, maybe it could have something to do with autism. But I just cannot see past the detail. I just
yeah.
have to, it's like the more detail I see, I have to add it in, and I struggle to not do that. Um, but yeah, just for the people who are listening, we were on about mentioning it anyway, weren't we? But I was recently diagnosed with autism, which I had no idea that I had. So it came as a bit of a shock, but it does explain a lot when I think about things. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, definitely. And I think I'm sure this will be something that comes up throughout the
Mm,
podcast, and because it obviously, I mean, you're at a stage I know where you, I think any diagnosis like that will, I guess, lead you to kind of look back at so many things across
yeah,
life and about who you are or why you are, how you are. So I imagine there's a whole lot to kind of process, and obviously, you,
yeah,
your art and being is so much a part of who you are. So I'm sure that's something where there'll be a lot of really interesting things that we can cover.
yeah. I think if anything, I think if obviously I was going to say if I have got it, but obviously I have. I've just had it diagnosed, but still, it seems strange for me to say that because it's still very new and I've not really got used to saying it yet. But if that's given me a strength where I can sit and focus on, I mean, I find it hard to focus on a lot of things, which we've talked about previously about reading and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But when it comes to painting, it's like the walls come up and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just me and that canvas, and the kids will be whizzing by, and I'm just like
yeah, yeah,
focus.
yeah,
And if that's helped me and that's given me like the ability to focus as much as I do to get the detail that I
yeah,
do in my work, then to me that's more like a superpower rather than
yeah.
a disability of any sort.
I think that as well, that ability to uh, like the way you did it, that really kind of resonates. Like when you can focus on
Mm.
something, and that when you live in a world that can be, generally chaotic. I mean, I know for me, I'm rushing here, there, and everywhere. Obviously, you've got all the kids at home, and
Yeah,
so having something where you can just, they're almost like shut out everything that's around you, or
yeah,
just go into your own thing. It's a really powerful thing. And in terms of mental health, one of the big words, oh, it's not a big word, but one of the words used a lot is about being mindful, being present, being in the moment,
yeah,
and finding things that allow you to do that, that take you away from your internal dialogue or whatever else is going on around you. Uh,
yeah,
for me, painting is that obviously for you, like it's good, you explain there about that detail that it's a great
mm,
feeling, isn't it, where you do
yeah.
lost in that.
It is, and I think as well, like I have a tendency to like overthink things, and I think that when I'm painting or
Words.
drawing, yeah, exactly. It quietens my brain. It gives me it just
Mm,
makes like yeah, how can I describe it? It shuts it, just shushes it all,
yeah,
and you can just sit there and you can just focus on this painting. And then what I really, really love afterwards, so God help me if it goes wrong, because then I'm just left like, oh no. But when I do have it and it goes right and it's how I want it, you step back from it, and not only is it taking that, the thoughts away and your worries away, you're just sort of focused in, but then afterwards and you look at it and you've just got this great sense of achievement
yeah,
on
yeah,
what you've done.
yeah,
And you stand back and you're like, wow, did I do that?
yeah,
Because you're so focused on it in the moment, you don't realize what it looks like till you step away and come
yeah.
back.
That, one of the things for me, it
Mm.
it when I do my painting in the kitchen, and I'll close the kitchen door on a night, and when I come down in the morning, I open the door in the kitchen. how I feel when I see it then, that
Yeah,
is kind of telling for me. And like you described it there, when you think, oh, wow, like, and it's not in a conceited way, it is that almost surprise, like flipping heck.
yeah,
It's
it
like,
is. It is, and it's a massive sense of achievement when you see that, and you just think, like, it's the best feeling that I
yeah,
can describe, that you can have, I think, as an artist. Um, but yeah, I think like the reason, like one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of share the things about the diagnosis and things like that, and I've talked about it on my page as well. Um, it's because I just think that, for instance, the older generation of my family, when I spoke about it, the first reaction I had was, "Don't tell anyone," don't share it with anybody. Like I wouldn't tell anyone about it, and it made me realize just how, autism and neurodiversity is
yeah,
looked at, especially with the older generation. And I know that what, my family member was trying to do was protect me
yeah,
from any
yeah,
negative things. It wasn't that they were ashamed or out like that. It was just simple fact was they wanted me to be careful about openly talking about stuff like this online. And it's because they wanted me to not be hurt,
yeah,
but the fact was, as soon as I heard that person say to me, don't share this, don't tell nobody, don't like mention it to
yeah,
anyone, it made me more determined to talk
yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah,
Because I thought, why should it be looked at like
yeah,
this? Why should people be ashamed? Why should anybody, make an excuse for the person that they truly are?
yeah,
And
yeah,
my daughter as well has got autism. She's got autism, and I asked myself, I always say to her, "Be yourself.
yeah,
Don't care what people think." Um, no, it doesn't matter that you've got autism. You're just as important as anybody else. And I've always, like, embraced her differences and tried to teach her to also embrace her differences. And I would be the same with all my children. I mean, my son has ADHD as well. And I just think, what sort of message am I sending to
yeah,
my kids if I am hiding the fact that I have that?
yeah,
What sort of role model would that make me?
yeah,
I wanted to be open about it because then that sends a clear message to my children and anybody else who's watching who's maybe gone through the
yeah,
same thing is why should we be ashamed of who we are? And it's just it's kind of there's a big stigma on it, and I just thought with sharing it openly the way I did online and talking about it now, if one person is watching our podcast who may be, going through a process of being diagnosed, whether they've just been diagnosed, I believe it helps that them people feel less alone as
yeah,
well, and
absolutely.
also not it normalizes it, which is what
Yeah,
I'm hoping to do a bit more. I
yeah,
think it is a lot more acceptable now in society than what it was years and years ago. But I just feel as though, it might help somebody else if I talk about it as
yeah.
well.
And I mean, a lot of what you said resonates there, and it's really interesting. I'm
Mm.
reading a book at the moment, uh, Shrinks, about the history of psychiatry. But that
That's interesting.
yeah, it is because when you talk about different generations,
Yeah,
understanding where particular, attitudes kind of come from. And I remember I was receiving counseling once. I mean, just saying that, I mean, that would have been a big, you don't admit
yeah,
that. And through my work, I obviously talk about my experiences with mental health and, the amount of people I've had come up to me afterwards and say,
mm,
I've been having counseling for this many months or a year, and my wife doesn't even know. Honestly, I can't.
yeah,
A lot of times that's happened, and the I remember I was so in this particular counseling session. So I wrote about my experience. It's weird. That's in
yeah,
terms of becoming or learning about the impact of creativity on me and having that outlet.
yeah,
It's weird. It was just an impulse to start writing. I'd never done anything like that before, but I felt a compulsion to write about what I was feeling,
mm,
and it was like I just had to do it. I just felt I had to do it.
yeah,
I felt I didn't have a choice. It's a weird thing, and but that made some people uncomfortable around me because it is that you don't put it on display, and it's like, and for me, it wasn't about displaying that. And I know we're going to talk about this about what we share and in terms of
Yeah,
um, and why we focus on certain things. But for me, it was initially I couldn't explain why. I just felt an urge to do. But then it was that it's a cathartic thing, but also it's that connection with others, like you say, and people who thank you because you've articulated something in a way that maybe they haven't been able to, and they say, "Oh, that's
yeah,
me." And
yeah.
when I remember the counselor said to me that, you have a previous generation who said, would be judged by whether their step was clean and,
Wow.
how your front garden looks. And it's funny, it's like, when, some of the stuff between me and my dad, this really kind of plays out a bit, but, and it said, so, so for that generation, us talking about feeling and things that were very, very stigmatized in the recent past. And
Yeah,
since that book Shrinks is really eye-opening. Um, it's but what you said is absolutely, because I had to reflect on this. I didn't want to hurt or upset anybody else by sharing my own stuff. And
yeah, but that's your personal story, and
exactly,
everybody, no matter what they've experienced in life, what they've gone through, everybody deserves a voice, as
yeah,
far as I'm concerned. And if somebody wants to share their personal journey, whether it's online, whether it's in a book, then I believe that person has every single right to do so,
yeah,
and they have.
absolutely. And
And
that,
I do think it helps other people reading it.
yeah, and that's it. And you see, I know now. I mean, a few years down the line, that it's
Mm.
kind of what I do for a living now. In terms of
Yeah,
mental health and so, and I know how much it does help people. So, but that what you said was where I got to was like, well, I've got nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to hide. I
yeah,
thought because what I'm just telling the truth, and
exactly.
if I'm okay with that, and that's a big part, being a big part, I suppose, the journey, if you want to call that, about, when you struggle with whatever, where you get to that point where you accept you for who you are.
Yeah,
It's like, why should I keep quiet? I've got nothing to be ashamed of. And you know that there'll be other people out there who are feeling ashamed and you don't want them
yeah,
to, because that's a big part of overcoming anything. We've got to be accept and face it. And if we're shut down through shame and stigma and it's just a cause of misery and
it is.
feeling that we're not enough and we shouldn't feel this way. But and this is one of the things that is really powerful about any form of expression and art is like you said, it shows that there are other people that feel like this. It's not just me.
Yeah,
And look at them; they're like you're able to create this work out of it. So how can it just be a bad thing when you can
yeah,
explain how it enables you to do that detail and things like that, and it might help other people to think differently of things that they have been ashamed of, and it's just so
yeah.
powerful.
I think as well, it's like what you said there, like if other people were watching it and they've gone through a similar thing, or if somebody, has just been recently diagnosed with autism and things, and they might be feeling like, oh, is this a bad thing? But
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the end of the day, it's not. It's just who you are, and your brain just thinks differently to other
yeah,
people. There's lots of like lots of great people who in part of history that
yeah,
um, have been speculated to have autism. Obviously, it wasn't diagnosed
yeah,
then. People like, I think, was it Beethoven or Mozart, a famous musician of some sort. I feel like it might have been Beethoven or Mozart, but I could be totally wrong. Um, yeah, there's Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, and I think even Marilyn Monroe was spoken to maybe have had that too. And
right,
so it makes me think like all these people who've made such a difference. I mean,
yeah,
there's so many people who've made such a difference to this world who've had autism. And I
yeah,
just think,
Uh,
why is it looked at so bad?
yeah,
If people, I mean, how many people are huge fans of these people? These
exactly,
like
yeah,
celebrities who've had in their life had autism. And I just think if people knew about it back
yeah.
then times would have changed a lot easier than what they have now.
Well,
But
you
it
hear
wasn't looked at.
No, it wasn't. And you hear it said, don't you?
Mm.
Like, say, where it wasn't diagnosed, and you hear people say sometimes, well, we didn't have that in my day. It wasn't like
Yeah,
we did, but in your
yeah,
day, and it's like, with the mental health, so people have been shut away, and
yeah.
you,
In institutes and all sorts.
people are being ashamed, and that's they did have it. It just was shameful then, and it wasn't spoken about, and um,
Yeah,
it's really sad, isn't it? When you think about it, you think of all the people who, no one should be made to feel that way, but also it's like, you know, the world's, just think of all the kind of gifts that the world's missed out on because the people that you described
yeah,
there is that where um it's that thing where people's talents and abilities are kind of dismissed or ignored because of their what seem to be their kind of flaws, and it's really sad. But and that's why fortunate to live in a time where we can be open, and through things like social media, we've got a vehicle to be able to share our own experiences and
yeah.
show people that there's a different way of looking at things.
There is. I mean, everybody's brain works differently, but it's like obviously some people who have autism probably struggle a lot more than others with certain things and aspects of the life. And I think when years ago, when it wasn't really looked at like it is now, it's just sad that when, like you said, people were, oh, well, we didn't have it in my day. Well, no, but you had struggling people
Yeah,
all over.
yeah,
And what the sad part was, it's a vicious circle because then people wouldn't have known what was
yeah,
going on with them. And they didn't receive the help and support that they truly needed and should have had. And so it got passed down
yeah,
generations.
yeah,
And that's what happened. And luckily, we're in a time now where these sort of things are identified and you do receive more support
yeah.
at school and things like that. So it's a lot better time that we
Yeah.
live in now for things like that.
Yeah, and I think it's a real gift to be able to express that kind of creatively, which I think brings us on to
Mm.
our next, well, the
Yeah.
second part of the question.
Yeah.
We'll get back to
Yeah. So we had the question from YouTube, which I read the first part out.
yes.
So the second part of the same question, that didn't make sense, did it? The second part of the paragraph of the two questions. Yeah. So the second part. Also, do you enjoy making art that captures happy feelings or sad feelings, and why?
Well, so I think that is a really, really good question. And it's
I
something
do
that we've
too.
spoken about, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
um see for me it's I suppose with a portrait you're I've said before that I like to capture something about someone's character. So I
Yeah.
suppose it's not necessarily about happy or sad in terms of it's something that speaks to me. The people generally people I admire and something in their expression that says something to me
Mm.
about what I admire in them or but I think where this is where in terms of my writing and where
Yeah.
particularly writing poems, I'd say that yeah, it did very much skew toward dealing with dealing with difficult things, and
Yeah.
and I was very conscious that I didn't want it to be an unhappy or depressing experience for people to read. So I was, and this is one of the ways it helped me so much because it's like it made me I had to find meaning in what I was
Mm.
going through. I had to, be writing about those times with a view that they will lead to something much better. And so,
Yeah.
and I spoke with the counselor I mentioned. I spoke with her about this, and there is this thing, isn't there, about how much art or stuff is about difficult, challenging things. And
Yeah.
there's the almost cliche of the tortured artist. And she said to me, and I thought it was really powerful that in society we don't have there's no barriers or nothing that shuts us down from talking about our happiness and talking
Yeah.
about good things in our life. And so it's almost like we don't need necessarily that outlet for it in the same way because
Mm.
you know we can share that with other people in a way that we can't necessarily share the difficult things. So we
That is such a good point, by the
yeah,
way.
we have to do a lot of
Yeah.
that internally. And again, and then from a creative point of view, that is a big way of processing and understanding that is through
Mm.
expressing it in that way. And you know, for me, turning into something powerful and beautiful is a really incredible thing. But so yeah, that it just always struck me that, and also it's like you know, it's that thing about identifying. You know, we identify, don't we, with that, with people, what feelings, emotions people are expressing, and you know, we've
Yes.
both of us that not wanting people to feel alone. I think that is a quite
Yeah. I
strong.
think people can relate to it, and
Yeah,
that's what the interesting part of when you're doing something quite sad is
yeah,
an interesting part of that doing that.
yeah. So what about you? Because I know this is something that yeah, is quite
Yeah.
significant
So
with you.
yeah, so I've drawn in. Well, I tend to do painting and drawing, but I think a lot of my saddest pieces are in the charcoal. Um, I've had it said to me on so many different occasions by more than a few people. Um, why do you always paint things or draw things that are so sad? Like, surely you want someone to look at your work and be like, oh, I feel so happy. You know, you don't want someone to look at your work and be like, oh, God, I feel so down after looking at that piece. And I was like, well, first of all, my first and instant reply to that was, I do my artwork for me. You know, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
paint it to please other people. When other people like to see it, it makes me feel fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But I enjoy to do my artwork for myself because
yeah,
I feel like, so for instance, and this could be part of why I'm being looked into for the other issues, but I'll often I'll have something that could have happened like years ago and I could just be sat watching TV and all of a sudden it'll come into my head. And then I'll be like, oh, made me feel a bit sad. And so it'll stay there
yeah,
and it'll keep going around. And so for me, if I get a canvas and I'll think, right, how can I put this feeling right now into a piece of artwork? Then I will come up with a way that describes my feeling. I'll then create that piece, and it might look like the most saddest, depressing piece of art you've ever seen in your life. But for me, that's made me feel happy
yeah,
because instead of it being in my head and me thinking about it, it's now on that canvas and it's trapped there forever.
yeah.
Um,
I
and
love
then
that.
when I
That's a great way of putting that.
yeah, captured it
Yeah,
in a little canvas for life. Yeah, I think as well as when I've uploaded them sort of pieces, I think when I first started posting them, I was a little bit like, oh God, what if somebody looks at it and they're like, oh, that's really sad, and they don't like what they see. And I was a little bit in two minds whether to share it. And I thought, well, it's my art page, you know, it's where I post my art, whether it's sad or happy or whatever, I should always post it if I'm happy with the piece.
yeah,
So I would put it on there and then people have like commented like this is how I feel or this reminds me of a time that I felt like this and
yeah,
they'll share like little snippets of their life where this painting is how they felt. And then a few people have said like thank you so much
yeah,
for drawing this or painting this because I've been able to relate. And I think that feeling that you've been able to connect with someone you don't even know over your
yeah,
piece of art is an amazing sort of
yeah.
feeling.
And that I'm always conscious of how I say it, where in terms of sharing our lived experience, however we do
Yeah.
that, it it gives other people permission to, not like I give you
So,
permission, but people feel, all
no,
right, I can say that. That's someone I can say that to.
yeah,
And
and it's nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. And
And
that, gone.
do you know the part where it said about where's it gone? Um, certain style of making things
Yeah.
and what you do with how you would create work. I did bring something with me just to quickly show.
All right. Cool.
Um, yeah, it's not 100% finished yet, but just leave this. So I know you've seen this before, Matthew. So what you're seeing
Yeah,
here,
I love this. Yeah.
it is, it's a bike
You know
wheel. So
what?
as you can see,
I've wondered about this because you're working on it quite a bit recently, weren't you? And I've wondered
yeah.
where
Do you
it's.
know when I said I lose like my thought of my train of thought and I think, oh, I can't finish that yet. Well, this is one of them. But for the last 2 days, me and John have been absolutely binge watching Last Kingdom for the fourth time. I love it. It's brilliant. And I thought, oh, do you know, I said to him last night, it's gave me inspiration watching this. I need to get that bike wheel finished. So it started off, obviously, I didn't pick it up with all of these pieces of card and stuff shoved in. But I found this next to a bin on my school run. To my children's absolute like horrified they were. Picked up, they were like, please, mum, no, there's kids around us, they go to my school, put it back. And I was just like, no, I'm taking it home with me. But then John seen me walk in and he's like, oh, what have you brought in now, you know? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm gonna hide it out the back. I'm not gonna use it yet. And so I created a surface on it and then once the surface was there, like newspaper, masking tape, I then oil painted it. So this is what it looks like so far. Don't know if you can see
Fantastic. That.
that.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
So
Absolutely
there's the
fantastic.
Odin, and this is like a kind of, I don't know if that's very clear on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I've still got a little bit more to do to it, but it's just about looking at things differently. Like there's a saying that I often use, and it's if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
yeah, yeah.
And
So true.
it is so true.
Yeah, yeah. That's brilliant.
It's,
That's really good.
thank you.
You know
It's just
that's something in my work. I'm that's a big part of what I do in terms of helping people to recognize their narratives. That I say we're all a collection of stories. We tell ourselves stories about
yeah,
ourselves, the world, our place in the world, what we can do, what we can't do, and there are the stories that we haven't consciously created. We've just grown up with them, and we so it's when life throws certain things at us that forces us to question and challenge it because something's not working for us and we need to kind of understand why. And that that thing about different ways that we can look at the same thing, that I mean,
yeah.
great example, an old bike wheel that someone doesn't want. I mean, I presume that's the case. It wasn't
Well,
just it was
to be frank,
nicked. It's like, oh, there it is, there it is. But
right. I assure the viewers that although I am originally a Grovillian, I did not steal that bike wheel. But I do thank the person that was cycling round Easterside and all of a sudden his wheel fell off, so he had to leave it by the bin and carry his bike home. So whoever you are, thank you very much for
yeah,
giving me this beautiful gift.
yeah. Well, yeah, but that's it. It's a really powerful example of that like you say that saying. I think it's
Mm,
Wayne Dwyer. I think is I, I've seen that quote credited to. Um, but yeah,
no.
it is that I'll give the example. Talk about your life as a story, and get people to think about that way. And if you're the main character, what will be the plot of your story today? And I give them an example. It's like, you can say about like Star Wars, you can say it's a
Mm,
story of a tyrant who goes around killing people and wants to destroy the whole universe. Or you can say it's a film about a group of rebels who create this alliance and community, and there's love that blossoms between them, and they defeat these odds. Just the same story is very different perspective, and like life will throw things at you. I mean, I'm not one for this toxic positivity, like kind of happy think your way out of things, but it's there is definitely, and when I say a happy thing you out, it's not just that simplicity of, say it a different way and then that's that. It's a habit. It's a constant,
Yeah,
a conscious effort to question how we look at things and why. And you start to get into the habit then of not just taking the first thing as gospel, but actually being
yeah,
question where's it come from? Why do I believe that? Because I mean, and this is something I'd like to talk about somewhat in future. The whole thing about I'm not creative. That I hear that so many times, and I said it used to say it myself
yeah,
about myself, and yet, and that to say like you give a, I don't know if I've talked about this before. You give a kid a piece of paper and a crayon, they're not going to wonder what anyone
yeah,
thinks about it. They're just going to paint and color and whatever else. But then you learn that it has to be good. And if you don't do it this way, you'll get told off or people will laugh at you. And so, oh, well, I'm not creative. And then you don't do it anymore. And it's, yeah,
yeah. I think as well, every they say, don't they? Every single child is an artist,
yeah,
and they lose it as they get older. Because of life stresses. I mean, if you go to work all day and you come home and you've got loads of kids and then you've got to do the tea and the last thing you're going to want to do is actually sit down and paint or draw. And I think life stresses stops people from doing these sort of
yeah,
things. And the thing as well, a lot of people be like, well, how can I sit here and justify myself drawing for so long when I could be doing this? Or I think it just gets lost over time. But
yeah,
kids don't have that worry that they don't worry about what people think of the
yeah,
drawing. They just get in and do it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it flows so naturally. And I think that's why children are so creative. But as you get older, it just goes unless you keep going with it,
Yeah,
or
and
you can recapture it later in life as
yeah,
well. It's there.
what you said there as well, so powerful. I think that, and again, going back to the kind of the work I do around mental health, that idea. So there's we talk about kind of that mindfulness being in the moment, and that need, that fundamental need we have to have uh, our own time, space for ourselves, for our own interests, for the things that kind of nourish our soul, um,
Yeah.
and yet what you said, and I think, especially for women, I find that there is almost a guilt
Mm.
associated with doing something that isn't for the kids or for someone else. That it's
Well,
seen as indulgent to do something because you enjoy it,
it is.
and it doesn't
Yeah.
have I don't know. We live in a world where it's like things have to be justified as worth, the time, effort, whatever, and but actually that looking after yourself, nurturing that creative part of yourself, that it's so good for you, and
Yeah.
by extension is then good for the people around you. And yet
Yeah.
people are made to feel guilty for it, that it's some sort of frivolous thing. And yet, not only for you, but again, going back to what we've been talking about and how that impacts, how your work impacts other people,
Yeah.
it, guys, it's as far from frivolous as,
I don't I see. I totally agree there with like a lot of people do feel guilty making time for themselves. But I mean, if anyone is watching who feels guilty about drawing and not maybe reading a book with their child at that particular moment in time, it's don't feel so guilty because once I was drawing and I think it was my Lowry piece.
oh yeah,
And I've got so stuck into it and so focused. I'm just like really got my music on in the background. I'm really getting like really into it. I think I'd been there about 6 hours, and my phone rings, and I'm like, "Oh, it's the school. Wonder what this is about." So I'm like, "Hello," and she's like, "Oh, hi. We've noticed you haven't picked Ava and Molly up from school." And I was like, "Oh!" So I looked and I was like, "Oh my lord, it is 20 past 3." And I was just like, I am so sorry. I'm not even going to make an excuse. I was too busy drawing that I actually forgot to go and pick up my kids from school. I mean, luckily the teachers know me and they thought it was quite funny and they seen the funny side of it. And I've never ran so quick in my life. But it's just like, don't feel guilty if you're drawing. Just always remember to collect your
yeah,
kids.
yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's kind of brought us back actually to, and we'll I think wrap up shortly. I think we've been chatting on for about an hour. But
Longer this time.
what you said there, that it comes back to that thing, something about that, whether you were creating something that's like happy or sad. And when you said about
Mm.
there the school, oh well, they know me. That's one of the reasons why I felt able to talk about my mental health and the struggles. I thought because people know me and know
Yeah,
that I'm not, I guess, a stereotype of what someone would think of depression, or
yeah,
it's that thing, oh well, God, we would never have thought that you could feel that. And it's like, and it's, I'm confident, chatty, I like a laugh. And that thing about people label things, as, oh, that's depressing. It's like, well, I've been through horrible, crap, shitty, depressing things, but I
yeah,
also have a lot of love and passion um and that's it. Life's all of those things, and being
yeah,
able to express all of those things is really important because it's and you know what? Some of the best things. I'm a big believer in this. So, some of the best things that ever happen in our lives come from the worst, and it's
yeah,
through going through it and learning from it and not shying away from it. And in terms of like grief and grieving, I mean, over the last year and a half, and like actually facing it is what you need to do to get through something. You have to
yeah,
face it. You have to face it. You can't, if something's shit and painful, you can't will that away. It just is, and you've got to go through it. And having
yeah,
something that helps you to go through it and process it is really important because otherwise we end up and going right back to that generation where we just shut these things down and
yeah.
it will come back to bite you on the ass. It just will.
It does. Yeah, and like you said there, we're often always sharing our happiest moments and our happiest times, and we always feel a bit ashamed to share our sad times. But really, happiness and sadness, it's just a human emotion. They're all the same, they're just different feelings. So
Yeah,
why is one looked at down rather than, that if what's the words for it? Like, why are we looking at sadness as a shameful kind of thing? When we're looking at happiness as a nice
yeah,
thing. And I think as well, it's like about telling our children, it's okay to feel sad.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
and
exactly.
I think, I mean, I've often give my kids like paper and stuff, and if you're feeling sad, why don't you have a little sketch on there? And I think it's just about being able to express yourself, whether
Yeah.
it could be through art, it could be through other ways. People have different interests, but yeah, I think it's just about expressing your feelings, like you said, instead of holding it in and bottling it up.
Yeah. And isn't it like, and you, again, you're a good example of this, I think, because like, you've shared that a lot of your pieces have been like from places that are very difficult, but then on the other side you have your dancing videos, and it's like, but you know what I mean. But that's what a lot of people would know
Yeah,
you as, the smiling, dancing, being daft, embarrassing your kids, and all the rest of it. But it is important, isn't it, to show that
yeah,
say the two things exist together, and 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 they make that make you the whole person that you are. And this is one of the things I'm really big on in my work, is that it's not it accepting all parts of who we are, rather than I like
yeah,
this is a good bit and this isn't. It's like, no, they're just labels we give to it. And actually, again, that's how life is: good, bad, light, dark. That's life. It's how you um hold both of those within you. And that's one
yeah,
of the things that I've really learned through grief, is that having to find a way to have joy and happiness and love and all that in your life, whilst also having a real sadness in you, that
yeah,
and it's not about getting rid of that, because why would you want to, when it's there for a reason, because you lost someone you really cared about. And
yeah,
but being, again, having those two things alongside each other, that's what we need to learn to do. Like, embrace all of human experience rather than
yeah.
just part of it down. And it's one of the
You
things.
need a balance.
Yeah, you do. And it's that, if you one of the things I've Brené Brown talks about, like, in terms of emotions, if you shut down your ability to feel, um the difficult and challenging emotions, you also shut down your ability to feel kind of
Yeah.
positive emotions. And, we've got to be able to experience and feel it all.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting what you said there about when I paint and draw a lot of sadness. That yeah, I post videos of me jumping around, dancing, being silly, and yeah, dressed as a bee. Um, but do you know what's really interesting actually is for me, it's when I first started to run my page, I wouldn't share them parts of me. Like when you see me dancing around and being silly on my page, that's me. That's who I am. That's what I do on a daily basis. Like to my kids, that's what they're used to seeing. They've grew up with me, you know. But even as a young kid, like when I look back at this, I think, God, my friends must have thought I was a right weirdo. I would invite my friends. I was probably about 10, 11, and you can imagine teenage girls are all listening to Destiny's Child and all that. I'm like, come round my house. So we'd go into my bedroom and I'd be like, right, sit on the bed and I'd get my record player, right? And I'd put Jolene and then I'd get my hairbrush and then I'd do like this dance and I'd be miming the song. And you could see them like, and I'm just going, watch me. And I'm thinking, like when I look, I thought it was great at the time, but when I look back now, I think, God, they must have been like, what the hell is she doing? And it's just something I've always done, you know. I've always done daft little things, and I mean, my kids are used to it. They've, like I said, they've seen it all their lives, but I never used to share that to Facebook because I was very mindful that people might look at me like the way I assumed my friends would look at me when I was young. By the way, if any of my teenage friends are watching this, I do apologise. But
Yeah,
that part
please,
of me is the
please
part
tell us more. I'm saying if any friends are watching, please share your funniest moment
I,
with Nat.
well, I know what song that they'll say if they are watching, and I'll tell you off this, and then we'll see if they say it. But I would hide them like things from my page. I never ever wouldn't have dared share me dancing a few years ago. And then I would only share like the sensible part of me, and then I thought to myself one day, I'm hiding who I really am. So by me being normal,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm actually not being myself. And so then I decided one day, do you know what? I will just share some of what I really am like at
yeah,
home. And so what you see on my page is exactly who I am.
yeah.
And it's been, do you know what? It's been quite refreshing to do that.
Isn't it? It's like I'm a
Mm.
big believer that that's what life is about. It's about I say this all the time. I program know yourself, be yourself, and
Yeah.
that and the experiences we go through in life, they reveal things about us, and getting to that point where we know and accept and dare I say even love ourselves for who we are
Mm.
and don't feel the need to hide anything. And again,
Yeah.
that's not saying everyone should share everything. Of course, it's a personal thing, but
Yeah.
being able to feel that I can be who I am. I don't have to shut down parts of myself to keep anybody else happy
Yeah.
or not embarrass people or whatever. And that and when we get to that point where we can be completely ourselves without caring what anyone else thinks, that to me is just, and again, in terms of mental health, I mean, I think that's the point at which your life is so much better when you
Yeah.
when you are able to get to that point.
I totally agree, and I think we as people we spend so much time, or like I'm talking from personal experiences. I'm not saying everybody is like this, but I think we waste so much time in life worrying about
Yeah,
how other people perceive us. Do we look silly? Are they looking at me and thinking this? And but really, you shouldn't care at all because it's like, let me see if I can quote this correctly. So it's better to be hated for the person you are than to be loved for the person that you're not.
yeah, absolutely.
Because then I think it's so hard to not be yourself. I mean, I've often at times where I've not wanted to show people the real me because I've felt a bit like, until I have a couple of pints of lager and then, I'm the normal me. But I just think that you often hide it and it can be more saddening for
Yeah,
you. Like you said,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
by holding back who you truly are. I think you lose the sense of identity as well. You don't know who you are because you don't know what's real and what's not because you're
Yeah,
masking it.
and I'm conscious of time because with that again, I go off on a whole because again, that's a massive part of saying the work I do. Very much that about
Yeah,
your sense of identity, your sense of self. It's like, and that when particularly when we're struggling with our mental health, that I'm not me anymore, or I don't know who I am.
yeah,
That is a massive one. I hear that a lot. It's something that I've certainly felt, and and that's one of the things where I say it's going through something like that. It almost presents an opportunity to become who you want to be because
yeah,
it's forcing you to look at those questions. Who are you? Why? What? If you're not who you want to be, why? If you don't know who you are, well,
yeah.
what's caused you to feel that way, and who's caused you to feel that way? It's yeah,
It's
and
re It's really interesting because when you said there, like when people often say, I don't know who I am anymore, with me, it's like, I don't think I ever knew who I was because I would be constantly hiding who I was.
yeah, yeah,
Well, now, which is like, to be quite honest, probably the first time in my whole life, like in the past couple of years, about the last 3 years, I'd say, that I feel like I'm finally me. And
yeah,
I know I've said that to you before, we've had chats about it, haven't we? But yeah, and I think part of that was, well, I think most of it was sharing who I really am
yeah.
and not being ashamed of it or embarrassed. And plus, obviously, finding out new, diagnosis and finding out who I am, that sort of things really helped. But I think it's so important to know who you are.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, isn't it? Because that, autism, masking is
Yeah,
that's a big part of it, isn't it? And I know that's one of the things with women and girls in particular not getting diagnosed, and a lot of women getting
mm,
diagnosed, obviously later in life. I mean, that that doesn't,
yeah.
you're not exactly late in life, but
Well, it is, Matthew. I'm knocking 40, these days.
it not being picked up because generally speaking, women and
Yeah,
girls are better at masking, and something to do with how we kind of connect socially and what have you, um, are able to I guess hide those
yeah,
more. And again, it just goes back to that importance, doesn't it, of not having to hide who we are.
yeah. I think it's so important, it really is. And it's been for me quite, like I said, very refreshing just to think. It's like you can just lift the weight and throw it away.
Yeah.
And do you know what? There's been a fly flying round this kitchen the whole time I've been on here. So I put the dog upstairs with the kids because they're all sat on the tablets and stuff. I was like, be super good while I do the podcast. Please don't start shouting and screaming in the background and running by. And I said, and if you want to take the dog, please feel free. So she's laid on the kids'
It's
bed right now. So I'll
obvious.
get rid of the dog and I get a fly.
Well, yeah, I've just finished watching Cobra Kai, and you were saying about a fly in the kitchen. Maybe think you need to have some chopsticks to catch it next time. Was it
Oh, yeah.
man who can catch fly and chopsticks can do anything?
Mr.
As
Miyagi.
well. Yeah. Right. I think on that, on that note,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's funny. We start off saying, have we got enough to talk about? And then like about an hour
yeah,
later. But I think it is a long weekend. Easter holidays, so people have got hopefully a bit more time to. I think we've had lots of
yeah.
really interesting chat there. So hope
Well, the thing is, Matthew, is if we don't do well with this podcast, what we could do is essentially have people play us at bedtime so we can make people fall asleep easier. Because there might be a few people asleep after this long one.
well, I don't know. Again, leave your feedback. We'll uh,
Yeah,
yeah, it's always and that obviously that I think a lot of what we talked about there came from one comment with that was two
yeah,
questions. So we really do appreciate anyone sharing their thoughts and questions, comments. Yeah, it always gives us lots of food for thought, and yeah, hopefully you found it interesting. And I'm
yeah.
sure actually a lot of people will be be inspired by what you've spoken about there, Nat. So
No,
thank
thank you. Well, I hope it would be something that people take positive things from. And again, like Matthew said, if anybody is listening and they want to share any thoughts on in the comments, please feel free. And we do answer as many questions as we can on these podcasts. I mean, luckily we've not been overrun with them yet,
you.
but we have had quite a few good ones,
Yeah, yeah,
So if anybody would like to ask, we will be able to answer it on the next podcast. It gives us a bit of insight, doesn't it, about the people who are watching and the
yeah,
questions they may have.
yeah, absolutely. Right, I can see my cat at my window demanding to be let in, so I guess that's my note to to say bye for now. All right, have a great
Yeah,
Easter, everyone, and yeah, enjoy that. Have a good one, and she'll speak to you again soon.
yeah. Have a lovely Easter weekend.
Will do. All right, bye
All
bye,
right,
everyone.
take care. Bye.
Bye.